Here we are, 10 o'clock a.m. on time. Good morning and a warm welcome back to Berlin for the second day of our INTERFAB AM event, Digitalization, Challenging and Enabling Future AM. Hosted by FABEC and our partnering FABs, the Danube Fab, FabCE and the Baltic Fab. To get into the right mood for the day, I would like to take a short look back and see the messages from our speakers from yesterday. For those who attended the meeting yesterday, you have 3 minutes from now on to get another coffee. So let's have a look at the slides. First, we had a presentation from JP Lauer from DFS, which was talking about the standardization and the need for further standardization and harmonization in future, that we have to insist on reference implementations and compliance testing for new standards. Consider using mainstream geospatial data tools wherever possible, and find out how drone geodata processors can help you and how you can help drone data. After that, we had a presentation from Robert Wehofer from Austrocontrol, talking about that AXM 5.11 is the proper international standard, but not suitable for all stakeholders. And there's a consistent generation of multiple aeronautical data formats in a single workflow is already feasible, like they do in Austria already, and specific GIS tools are a driver for aeronautical data format developments. A last presentation in the first session was from Thomas Oster from EASA, who was talking about the new EU regulations on drones and specifically about the UAS geozones. That member states have to define their zones themselves, that the common data format is defined in EUROCAE ED 269 Chapter 8, and that the geographical zone data are published centralized or decentralized. It's up to the states to decide. And the data quality requirements depend on the nature and location of the zone. In the second session, under the headline of harmonization, we first had Kevin Elias from Comobsair, the Belgian air component. He was talking about that CPA, cross-border areas, naming harmonization across all FABs is important. Having all ATS systems working out of one central database is safety related, and standardization of different ARPs will help the user in finding information. That was interesting because ICAO standardized the ARP format many years ago, and up to now, it's not really standardized. After that, we had a presentation from our colleagues from Bulgaria, from Bulatsa, Ivan and Dragan. They were talking about their experience in the harmonization of dataset, of cross-border dataset, that AM data that use the same AXM dialect are required to facilitate cross-border sectors to optimize air traffic flows. And data consistency checks and resolutions must be performed before publication and are required for automation. And automated systems, system-to-system data exchanges simplify routine works and helps to lower work for ADCOs and supervisors. That was a very good example how harmonization can bring efficiency into our business. That was the last session from yesterday. And today we will also have an interesting program focusing mainly on UAS and UAV, or also called drones. And after the lunch break, there will be another highlight of the AAM event. This will be the signing of the declaration on deeper cooperation in the AAM domain. This declaration will be signed by 4 CEOs from the 4 different FABs, FABEC, FabCE, Baltic Fab and Danube Fab. So stay tuned. Now we're going to start with the session number 3, which is the first session of today, under the headline of Geodata and UTM, the future of AM. So let me first give me a short statement about the topic itself. as unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV, or unmanned aerial systems, or all in all, the drones are considered to be aircraft, they must also be treated accordingly. This means, for example, that the air situation, and in case of drones, especially the airspace close to the ground and right down to the ground itself, must be represented as exactly as precise as we have it in ATM. This is the basis for a preparation in the pre-flight phase and for the flight planning itself. When it comes to drones, we are not talking about flight planning, we talk about mission planning. In particular, the exact representation of so-called no-fly zones are essential for this. But this is also important for safe integration of UTM in ATM because there's a lot of overlap. And that's where AIM comes in. But there's the big but. Like I said in my keynote speech yesterday, how can we avoid failures that have been made in the past? This is important at this point. But there's now the opportunity to take the direct route to digitalization in this new environment, and this opportunity must be used now. So first of today, we will see a presentation from Dr. Vera Werner. This will be a video because unfortunately Vera had some time constraints and cannot be with us today. But let me first introduce our speaker. Vera joined the DFS, Deutsche Flugsicherung, AIM department, my team, last year. She's a member of the geodata management team and is jointly responsible for geodata preparation in UTM, or for UTM. She holds a Master of Science and a Doctor in Geography and has done research on tsunamis and earthquakes in the Mediterranean. Before joining DFS, she worked as a lecturer and geodata analyst at the Hessian State Office for Nature Conservation, Environment and Geology. Okay, we will see a video right now from Vera. Enjoy it.
Hello everybody, my name is Vera Werner. Many greetings to Berlin. In the next 20 minutes or so I would like to give you a brief insight into geodata in connection with UTM, and I would like to report about our experiences that we have made so far. Here's a brief overview of my presentation. We start with some basic information about geodata and geodata modeling. Then let's take a look at some of the challenges that this new topic brings with it. And afterwards, in the third part, I will show a few examples to demonstrate the benefits of geodata and how they can be used in ATM. The topic of geodata is quite a new topic for AIM, so to speak, new ground for AIM. In contrast, the processes in ATM are well established and data are available for the corresponding airspaces. For example, we have data on obstacles greater than 100 meters or datasets of detailed airport infrastructure and so on. But for the very low airspace, and this is where the majority of UAS vehicles, also called drones, operate, we had in the very beginning no available information or data representing the detailed buildings, vertical structures and areas of this airspace. So as a first step, we had to search for available geodata sources. And doing so, we had a lot of questions in the beginning. For example, where can we get high quality geodata? What data are required? Which geometric accuracy is needed? What about license fees? How to model UAS geozones? How to enrich geozones with additional information? And of course, how to store and manage such large volumes of data. But before we continue with the modeling of UAS geozones, here are a few basics. Perhaps you have already asked yourself, what are geodata? Geodata is the short version of geographic data and information, and geodata have an explicit association with a location relative to Earth, for example, geographical position defined by coordinates. But in addition, and this is the great thing, geodata have other information such as the name or address data or the elevation of an object. And these are stored in a so-called attribute table. This means when you select a geo-object, its properties are displayed. And we have geodata as grid data and vector files and as 3D data. And as a second definition, what are UAS geozones? UAS geozones are sensitive or risk areas where drones are prohibited from flying by law, and this can be national law or European law. So how are geozones modeled and what does this have to do with geodata? Here is a small example from Germany. According to our legislation, it is, for example, forbidden to fly in the direct vicinity of power plants. And figure 1 shows the area of a power plant in Frankfurt, here in gray. And first of all, we need suitable geodata that represent this area in the best possible way, e.g. official geodata of the property management, for example. This area shown in red in figure 2 represents the area of the power plant and is provided with further information or attributes that can later be displayed to the user. For example, we have the name of the power plant or the legal situation. In the last step, an exclusion zone is added based on the 100-meter buffer according to German law. If we take a look at the UTM relevant data sets, the UTM relevant aeronautical data set represent more or less this red square. As a brief remark, the proportions are only estimated. And these are, for example, data of airports, heliports, airspaces, or obstacles. In comparison, all UTM relevant geodata, so all US geozones, for example, national parks or power plants, have a significantly larger data volume, shown here as a blue square. But in addition to the UTM relevant geodata, there are numerous other geodata that are available, represented here by the dark blue square. And these data are already partly included in the modeling of the US geozones, e.g. Digital terrain models, but offer far greater potential for use. For example, we have remote sensing data, digital terrain models, digital topographic maps, population density, official geodata on properties or 3D buildings. In other words, we receive a comprehensive geodata set quasi as a byproduct of UTM, which has a high potential for further use, for example, for ATM. As a geodata manager, it's our goal to represent the reality in the best possible way, and based on this data, we modeled the geozones as accurately as possible. For example, on the left, you can see the highway shown as a simple red line, and on the right, the roadway is here in yellow, is modeled as a polygon, which is much closer to reality. Depending on the reliability and accuracy of the geodata, the accuracy of the US geozones also change. Sometimes this can be several hundred meters, which, when you think about the speed of a drone, could be very negative. As an example, here the US geozone of a hospital in Germany based on different data sources and modeling approaches. The protection zone is 100 meters by law, here the red areas. If the protection zone is based on a single point geometry, it is quite simple to create, but not all buildings of the hospital are covered by the US geozone. As a first improvement, we could move the point as the centroid of the hospital area, but even here, not all buildings are covered. Much more precise approach is to use the area of the hospital itself, and now the 100-meter protection zone, here the red area, covers the entire hospital area. You can use, for example, also official building footprints, and here too the UAS geozone covers the entire hospital area. So as a short conclusion, the modeling of UAS geozones depends on the available data sources, but also on the accuracy you want to achieve. The topic of geodata in connection with UTM is a new topic for AIM, and of course, as with every new topic, there are some challenges. For example, the interpretation of the current and applied regulations itself can be seen as a challenge. In Germany, for example, we have geozones which are quite clearly defined. For example, control zones of airports or nature reserves. But for some UAS geozones, there is room for interpretation. For example, what exactly are industrial areas, or what is an assembly of people? And how do we actually deal with temporary data? For example, opening hours of markets, for example, events, and so on. Even with the new European drone regulation, which comes into force next year, some definitions of UAS geozones remain unclear. For example, what exactly is meant by an assembly of people? After the European Aviation Safety Agency, an assembly of people is referred to a crowd, but is not defined by a specific number of people. For example, they listed sport, cultural, or political events, public places such as commercial streets, beaches, parks, and sport facilities. But what about schools? What about kindergartens, traffic jams, or campsites? And also here, there's still room for interpretation. In our experiences so far, the main challenges of this new topic can be divided into 4 areas. First, the technical aspects. The used geodata have a large data volume and must be managed, validated, and processed. And this requires a certain level of expertise of complex data management and the corresponding technical infrastructure. And second, the provision and modeling of UAS geozones. We have to deal with different quality and reliability of geodata sources. We have to think about the different geometrical representation possibilities, point versus polygon. In addition, geodata must be validated and checked to ensure consistent quality, and a lot of research is necessary to model the reality as good as possible. And third, the legislation allows a certain interpretation, as shown by the example, what is an assembly of people. And a further challenge from our point of view is fourthly, the handling of license and licensed fees when it comes to the use of geodata, and even open data such as OpenStreetMap, for example, is subject to certain terms of use. But there are, of course, also numerous possibilities and opportunities. For example, we have already many established industry standards for geodata. This means, for example, that geodata can be easily exchanged and can be integrated into many systems, and the standards guarantee a certain quality. The processing of geodata is linked to many new technologies, such as artificial intelligence, for example, and there's a wide range of different geodata. For example, we have grid data, we have vector data, 3D data, for many possible applications. UAS geozones can be provided by a national provider in the sense of use base. This also includes, for example, the data provision for geofencing or for explicit drone corridors where flight is permitted. And there is, of course, also the possibility to market precise geodata. The new European drone regulation creates a uniform legal framework that makes it easier, for example, to conduct cross-border flights, and we have, of course, benefits for ATM. For example, you can support the process of instrumental flight procedure design with data on population density and population distribution, for example. These geodata are grid data and can be summarized, for example, for different regions, or we could use a digital elevation model with an accuracy of up to 20 centimeters. And it's even possible to combine several information, which may give a good overview in the first step, but also precise calculations are possible. Another benefit would be, for example, the provision of precise and up-to-date geodata for the identification of suitable sites for example, radio systems or radio systems. Here we could use a detailed geodata set of the building situation, for example, official building footprints, or again, the population density and a digital elevation model. And with geodata software, it's also possible to perform a detailed location analysis with, for example, radio search or a location analysis according to specific criteria such as protected areas. The situation is similar with property management. Here, for example, we could refer to extensive official cadastral data where the building function is also defined, or we could also edit and upload our own geodata. And further benefit of geodata, for example, can be seen in the obstacle data, for example, as for wind turbines. By matching multiple data sources, the accuracy and the actuality of the existing dataset can be further improved, and wind turbines and other obstacles can also be automatically queried via a satellite image-based evaluation, for example, using artificial intelligence. So as a conclusion, we can state that we have an extensive geodata set with a high potential for benefit. We have accuracies in the range of meter and even centimeter. Geodata is a new ground for AIM, which means on the one hand a lot of freedom, but also a lot of ingenuity. We need creativity to depict reality as accurately as possible, and we need high storage capacity and computational performance. But on the other side, we have a high degree of standardization of geodata and processing software. And of course, we have a lot of benefits also for ATM and as well as for other business areas. Here I am at the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention and stay healthy.
Thank you very much, Vera, for this very interesting and very good-looking presentation. And by the way, Vera, wherever you are, happy birthday to you. So it should also be mentioned, however, that since last year, our geodata team has been working on a project that focuses on artificial intelligence, among other things. This project is concerned with the identification of terrain features and aerial and satellite images by means of automatic structure and pattern recognition. This can be used, for example, for precise geoinformation for wind turbines. There are currently about 30,000 of them in Germany, and manual efforts is just not feasible. Here, a high degree of automation is required, and artificial intelligence can help. So the next speaker is Jan-Erik Putze, CEO of Tronic, a joint venture of DFS and Telekom. Jan-Erik will highlight the importance of geodata for drone flight, in fact, the enabler for an UTM service. Don't know if Jan-Erik is already in line. Hi, Jan-Erik. Just give me some seconds.
Hello, Adi.
Just give me some seconds to introduce you to the audience. Jan-Erik was a banker, airline pilot, and flight instructor before he joined DFS Deutsche Flugsicherung in 2007. In 2014, he moved to the DFS subsidiary Eisenschmidt, as that's a distributor of DFS, as operational manager, where he held the sole management position from 2016 until 2018. Since January the 1st of 2019, Jan-Erik has been manager, director, CEO of the Dronic Limited, which is responsible for providing, marketing, and selling services for drones and other unmanned aircraft in Europe. So before you start with your presentation, let me ask you, Jan-Erik, what is the situation for UTM and drones in Germany? Is there already a business? And if so, how is this business developing?
Yeah, Hadi, thank you for the introduction. Drones in Germany, they are, let's say, rising up. We're getting more and more requests of operators flying drones in any areas, uncontrolled and controlled airspace, and we are actually trying to manage them. Unfortunately, we have some problems because the regulation process is, or the regulation itself is not really in place, and so it prevents companies from investing money in a non-known environment. So that's our problem. But we see that more and more projects started in an R&D, so research and development phase, and they now try to get, or let's say, they try to go out to have a normal operation, let's say a daily operation. But this is rather limited for the time, but we see that, or we hope and see that in 2 to 3 years, this will definitely rise.
That sounds good. So thank you for the short explanation and information. And I propose that you start with your presentation, please, Jan-Erik.
Okay. Yeah, I will talk a little bit about geodata enabling UTM service, but maybe more from a user perspective rather than from someone who is really collecting that data. First of all, I would like to start with a small video to let's say to set the scene what my presentation is all about. So it's about only 10 seconds.
Jan-Erik, do you need help from from our side, or?
No, it was not possible for you to see because I saw the video.
No, we haven't. We just saw you, which is nice, but that's.
I'm sorry for that, but for some reason I was able to see that. I didn't know why it was not possible via the presentation. I don't know.
Can you make
I have to start it again. Yeah, I'll do. No. What do you see now, Hadi? Do you see now?
I just see you.
Still?
Did you share the screen?
Wait a second. Maybe that was my problem that I didn't share it. Aha! Okay, then I have to start it over again. Sorry for that mistake. I didn't do that, to be honest.
It's too easy. It's not as complex as a drone.
That's true. Wait a second. Oh, here we go. I have to. What do you see now?
That looks good.
That looks more okay. So then I start over again. So this is a very small introduction about, let's say, 30 seconds, and then the presentation will continue. So let's see if you see that now. Yeah, there was this small video, but the thing behind that presentation, now it's not going far away. I don't know why that was working. I have to start it again. Okay. So sorry for that. So now you saw now a drone. The drone is now hitting an obstacle, I would say. But if I draw that picture a little bit different, let's say you have two operators doing the same job, and they both using not the same data, and this is very important. So the one that flies on the first day has exact data and very updated data, and it was very, very good for them to fly because they could plan their mission. Everything was done perfectly, and the data was accurate. And the second day, another operator is flying almost the same mission, but the data source they are using is quite different. So what's behind the scene is that it is very crucial for us that we have let's say a single source of data truth, even if we fly beyond visual line of sight. So that if the operator is not able to see the drone anymore, he's just controlling the drone via let's say via their system, and he's not able to see the drone. So it is very important that he can trust data, and of course geodata, and of course he needs traffic information, being able to avoid other traffic. And why is that so important? And why is even our industry, it's very, very important that people know that it's where the data is coming from and that they can rely on their data. Why is that? Is the sky really the limit? We say, yeah, for some reason it is, because in manned aviation, the pilots, they know their rules, their airspaces, there are even some weather information they have to consider if they fly into controlled airspaces. But drone pilots, they just come from the streets. They have no clue about aviation. They look up in the air and they see just the blue sky, maybe the sun, and that's all they see. They don't see traffic lights. They don't see maybe traffic signs. They don't see routes. They just go there. They unpack their drone. They just go fly, and they think they are not doing something wrong. And this is that's what we see quite often. So we talk to people and say, hey, we have some rules here. You have to follow rules. And then they say, okay, what do we have to do? You have to have training, and of course you have to have the right data depending on the flight. If you only fly within, let's say, your area and you have everything under control, okay, then data is not that crucial. But once you fly a little bit further or even long distances, and that's what we call BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight flying, then it is very, very important that you have right and good data quality. And this is something where we have to convince the people. And the other thing is, for some reason, drones are invisible. They are invisible for air traffic control and, of course, to other operators, because they have no clue that someone else is flying there. And why is that? Because we're more or less talking about uncontrolled airspace, and in uncontrolled airspace, it's see and avoid. And we try to change that a little bit to detect and avoid. And this is something what Dronic is actually doing. We are using mobile technology to make drones visible in the sky, and we share also that view, and also the people we know flying in that airspace to others, that we have a complete picture of who is in the air at what time. And of course, as I said before, drone pilots are not that trained as we know from manned aviation. Of course, they are trained somehow, but dependent on what their mission is, they don't have the same skills as manned aviation pilots. So this is what we have to consider when we talk about that. And why is it very important and crucial? Because we have some more drones. I mean, we have increasing number of drones. We have different types of drones. We do have air taxis. Okay, they are just, let's say, very few. They are in the stage of they are, let's say, trying to fly. They get the approval. So they are, let's say, they will come in 3 to 4 years, maybe in a bigger amount of numbers. But what we currently have already is a huge amount of different drones doing maybe logistical work, or even just doing photo flights or inspections. That's what we have. So this increasing amount of drones makes it very important that we make them visible. And what is the approach of doing that? Dronic thinks, other than the EASA Commission, that we have to talk about integration versus, or let's say, to integrate the drones into the existing ecosystem or environment of the manned aviation. This is very important because we don't see a segregation is what we need. And the technologies out there makes it even possible to integrate drones into the existing environment. And this is what we think is the right way to do. So we make everyone visible, and this is very important. Not only the drones, we want also that the manned aviation is visible, because once they are visible, they can all, let's say, detect and avoid themselves. And of course, the drones, they have some more technologies inside, so they really can avoid other traffic by just means of flying away, or just mitigating that and maybe descend or just fly away. But this is we need that everyone is visible, and this is something Dronic is addressing, because we think it's very crucial. How do we do that then? Just to give you a little bit outline. If you look at this picture, it's very complicated at first, but if you look, we have some UTM services right here. That's actually what we are doing. We are collecting data from ground stations. We are collecting data from drone detection services. Even we take in consideration radar data from ATM service and integrate it into our UTM service. And we collect data from our drones via the mobile network also into that UTM, and then share the complete picture. This is how we, let's say, light the blind spot even for the ANSPs in the uncontrolled airspace, because we talk about very low airspace, below 150 meters, even lower than that, and the radar coverage is just simply not possible in that altitude. But that's why we use mobile technology and to detect drones into that area. And now I'm going to show you how we put that all together into one picture. Can you just remember the picture I showed you with the blue sky? This is actually when you look on a screen, you look at Germany, for example, and you see some routes, you see some mountains maybe, and you think, okay, I just can go and fly. But is it really that what you should do? And I don't think you should. But if you look at Germany and the map, first of all, it's pretty, let's say, it's clear, nothing is in there. But then you can see on the map layers on the right top, when you just implement all the map layers, which we have currently into our system, thanks to REM and Hardy and his team, we have a big variety of data and different map layers, you can see. And if you look at that, and then you say, oh, wow, Jesus, I cannot even fly because everything has a certain color. And what should I do now? And this is why I say, yeah, it is good to have that geo data, and this is even airspaces, whatever is in there, to really identify if you can fly in that area or not. So if you zoom in, like we are just doing, then you get closer and closer, and then you see what kind of different layers you have. You have high tension lines, you have cities, you have industry areas, you have sites, you have everything what you need. And this, again, is very crucial, because this is the only way you can, let's say, apply for a certain route, and then you can make your flight even possible. And this is also very crucial, that you have correct data. Let's say there's an area which was, let's say, geodata before, but it changed due to some reason, and it just suddenly disappeared. First of all, you thought, well, I cannot fly, but now you can say, yeah, I can fly now, because my data is correct, and it shows me, well, this time I can fly over that certain area with no problem. But what kind of challenges are we actually having? The current data set you used for the manned aviation is more or less different from what we need for drone operations. So we definitely need more and more data, because you fly very low, and you need some more information about obstacles, even 3D data. So for us, coming back to the manned aviation sector, you now have to collect data which is irrelevant for manned aviation. And what we have currently, we don't have a single source of truth for UAS. Everyone who is collecting data has to see where do I get my data from. There's no single source currently available, different from the manned aviation. And of course, it's heterogeneous data source. You have different formats, you have different accuracy, you have different reliability and validity. This is for someone coming not from the manned aviation side, talking about accuracy and reliability, even on the validity. So is my data actually really valid, is something they just really don't know. And of course, the geodata supply and the demand is divergence, depending on the operation you have. And of course, we have no market for that currently. So there are only a few people offering that service. Why is that? Because there are so different sources. You really have to know where to get your data from to have the complete data set, being able to do your mission, being able to fly beyond visual line of sight. So what we actually need is, of course, validated, reliable, accurate, and real-time geodata. I mean, that's for sure. But we also want to have a single source of truth. So we want to know where we get that data from, and we have to rely on that data. So it's very crucial to have this data set available to everyone. And we have to consolidate that, and the best way is, of course, have a format which is function for everyone. And of course, we have to leverage artificial intelligence technologies, in fact. So that's what we need. And the thing is, we have different sources. If you look at Google Maps, for example, they have almost everything, but what they don't look on the regulatory side. They don't even want to care. They don't want to look at that. They just want to have an easy, let's say, access to data for everyone. But where is this data coming from? This is something we really have to stress, and we really have to emphasize that this is very important. So we have, in the end, to combine these data sources together, and then, of course, take the regulatory look also into that area to have this single source of truth available. If we take now a little bit, let's say, a view to the future, what do we have today? As I said before, you have a manual data collection from multiple different sources. And I think we have at least 20 to 25 different sources where we have to gather data from. We have to a huge amount of data. We have to consolidate that, and we have to format that. And of course, we have to see, is this really accurate data we are using? This is our situation we have today. What should we have tomorrow? Tomorrow, I hope that we have authorized data sources and standardized data sources and data provision for these type of operations. And we want to have a single source of truth for validated geodata. We do have some sources, but they are not validated. And I say they're not, we don't know where they're coming from. And we have to integrate that. We have to have real-time information. Why is that important? Let's say if you are not allowed to fly over populated areas, you're not allowed to fly about a huge number of people. So if you have real-time information and you know when, let's say in Frankfurt, the Frankfurter Eintracht soccer team plays football, then you cannot fly over that stadium because there are lots of people over there. You should not do that. It's just not allowed to fly over there. But if there's no game and no one is let's say, out there, why shouldn't you fly over it? So we get more and more data, even beyond the geodata. We need, let's say, data which is we need algorithm, and of course, we need to know when there are some activities. Or we go over, let's say, in the city center, there's a shopping street. You can fly maybe Sundays, you can fly over there, but maybe not on Saturday around 10 o'clock because it's then crowded as hell, so you cannot fly. And this even stresses the emphasis on real-time data. And if we look what we will have tomorrow, everything should be globally connected, and the geodatabases should be available to everyone. We should have self-learning algorithm based on artificial intelligence. Predictive geodata functionality should be available. As I said before, shopping centers and the football stadium. We should take weather into consideration because if it rains, maybe there are not so many people out there on the shopping street. Seasonal activities, everything should be taken into consideration to have that data available. So it's not only about collecting data, it is also to get that data, let's say, even enhanced and predictive, that we know Sunday 10 o'clock you can fly, but not on Saturdays. So this makes it. Then we can also have the possibility to tell the operator, use a different date, and then you can do your operations. We are not closing down everything, but we tell him, well, if you use a different date, maybe a different time, then just your operation is approved because we don't see that many people out there. So I hope you see from today until tomorrow and even beyond tomorrow, data is what you need. Geodata and of course data that predicts, let's say, traffic or even population on the street. Coming back to what I've said before, we have single sources. We have telcos who have sources. We have Google. We have maybe Amazon later on having sources. They have real-time data. Real-time. They have that already. They can predict, let's say, traffic jams. Even they can tell you where it rains because they have an interaction to the wiper in the car. Whenever it's on, it tells them, well, it should be raining there. And if 3 cars at this area have the wiper on, then they could say, well, yeah, it's raining. And then you get a symbol on your map saying that. They have accurate data. They have opening hours because they get information from their users. Everyone who has a Google account can insert their opening hours and what they offer. They have even links to their website. They have everything. I mean, you know that already. And of course, they have also satellite pictures. They have street view information. So they have 3D available currently. But what do they don't have? And that's why I'm saying they don't have, let's say, the regulatory side on it. So what ANSPs have, what you have verification, you have validation, you have validated geo information. You know what it means to be conform to the legislative and regulative requirements. You know that. You live that for 20, 30, 40 years already. So this is something what you have in your portfolio, which all the others on the left side, they don't have because they really don't care. And the thing is, we definitely should bring these two sides together. And summing up my presentation is to tell the ANSPs and actually to tell you, we need a single source of truth for that data set to ensure air safety also for the drone side. And if you wait and if you don't act now and if you don't do anything, someone will come and disrupt that current setup. So I think you are actually the ANSPs, as you are the right ones reaching out and say, yeah, we are this single source of truth, and we combine the single source from the telcos and others outside with our knowledge and our let's say portfolio, and make that source, let's say, then validated and be the single source of truth for that. And that's actually the end of my presentation. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer some questions later on. Even now, I don't know, Hardy, what the scope for that is, but yeah, that's from my point of view. And thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Jan-Erik. And yeah, despite the small technical problems in the beginning, your presentation was great at the end. And again, thank you very much also for these enthusiastic words which you were addressing to the AIM community. I was very happy to hear some keywords in your presentation, like standardization. I don't know if you had the time to join the meeting yesterday. That was also a very interesting and important topic yesterday. And but we will have the question and answer session later on. But just one personal remark from my side to your presentation. You were talking about this, where we in AIM, we call it dynamic information, but you were talking about the soccer team of Eintracht Frankfurt when they are playing. I mean, nobody's interested when they are playing. But anyhow, there are a lot of people then there, and then drone flying is not allowed. But this is, you know, when they are playing. It's not by chance that they are playing. But for example, when there's an accident on the motorway and the police or the fire brigade wants to stop drone flying over this area, we need a kind of NOTAM, as we say in the AIN domain. And this is also missing up to now, this kind of dynamic information, a notice to all the drone pilots that it is not allowed to fly over a certain area. And yeah, as you said, AIM is ready for this. We have the experience since decades. And so, yeah, that must be our direction to go in future. We are ready for this. Thank you very much again, Jan-Erik, and see you later in the question and answer session. Thanks to Frankfurt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, next, our next presentation, it's gonna be a video, is from the people from Boeing, or Boeing Jepson, but it's now called the Boeing Global Services, and they produced a video, it's called unmanned aerial vehicles safe in the air. And before we have a look on the video, let me first introduce the three colleagues who were involved in producing the video. We have first Annalisa Mautes, and we'll see her later on in the question and answer session. And Annalisa received her master in mechanical engineering from Technical University Darmstadt in 2015. And she has been with Boeing Global Services since 2016, starting as a researcher in the Digital Solution Research and Rapid Development Group. Since 2018, Annalisa is leading the Drones Advanced Research Thrust, and in cooperation with Boeing, she's working on her doctoral thesis in this field, in the field of risk-based flight planning for drones. And we also have Carsten Skribeck. He received his master in physical geography with a focus on geographic information systems and remote sensing from the University of Frankfurt in 2017. He joined Boeing in the same year as a geospatial technician in the nav data approach coding team. And since 2019, he additionally supports the relation management with aviation authorities. And last but not least, we have Kai Hörchner. He started to work for Jeppesen as a dispatcher, a flight data specialist in 1998. And as a senior manager and project manager, he has led major progressive technical and organizational modernization programs with Boeing Global Services internationally. And with his background in strategic marketing and innovation management, he's responsible for new business developments and business transformation initiatives in the aerotechnical editorial offices. So let's have a look on the video from Boeing.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our Boeing Global Services presentation about UAV Safe in the Air. My name is Carsten Skribeck, and as an Aviation Authority Relationship Representative, I'm glad to have you all here. Regarding the agenda, first I will say some introduction words, then I will give the word over to Annalisa for the UAV deep dive. Afterwards, Kai will introduce our brand new Innovation Solution Network, and then I will say some closing words. But first of all, we should talk about where we are located in the broad Boeing Global Services organization. All three of us are working for Jeppesen, which is located in Neu-Isenburg, near Frankfurt in Germany. Right now you can see me standing in front of our main office and also in front of Captain Jeppesen with his little black book. We are working for the Global Data Management Group as well as the Research and Rapid Development Group, which contains to the Innovation Lab. Our Jeppesen core strengths are a high awareness regarding data safety, data dependencies, as well as the impact of data changes. Remembering Captain Jeppesen, who started collecting aeronautical information in his little black book more than 85 years ago. And he said he did this not to get famous, but to stay alive. Our main strength was and will always be data safety. Our Jeppesen core products are JEP charts and nav data, supporting all mission types as well as all flight phases. I assume you can remember our Jeppesen Airway Manual. But nowadays, operations are digital, so you will be more familiar working with our digital solutions like Jeppesen Flight Deck. But this is not all. Today, we are talking about UAV operations. This means for us, for Jeppesen, innovation from the core business beyond nowadays airline operations. This is the right time to hand the drone over to Annalisa, who will talk about how an advanced, intelligent geospatial data processing can enable safe and efficient autonomous UAV operations.
Hello, my name is Annalisa Mautes and I'm leading the UAV research thrust in our Research and Rapid Development organization. Our vision is to enable commercial UAV operators to safely plan and execute their mission through our services. Drones have been viral in our community since a couple of years now and are expected to be a constant member of the national airspace in the not-so-far future. One pillar to safely integrate them into that airspace is to provide them the right kind of data. This is what we have been working on since the beginning of 2018. We started with the identification of the customer needs, so to identify what kind of data do commercial UAV operators need in order to be able to plan and execute their mission. Then we looked at what we already provide as products for manned aviation and what kind of data can be used from our products already. The next steps was then to identify the gaps between what UAV operators need and what we can already provide them from manned aviation, and to identify how can we close those gaps with new products or services that we can offer them. As this is still a growing and emerging market, we decided to put ourselves in the shoes of our future customer and set up an own UAV operation. We call it the Mail Challenge, where we deliver our in-house mail between two buildings in Neu-Isenburg via drones. Although the trajectory is not very long, the operational environment is quite complex. We are located in the controlled airspace, so DCTR from Frankfurt Airport, and we want to operate the drones beyond visual line of sight. This requires special clearances and flight approvals. But besides the flight approvals and the clearances that we need, we also need data. So when we wanted to plan our trajectory that we wanted to fly with the drone, we saw that we needed to know how high the buildings are that are surrounding us, or how high is the forest that we wanted to fly over. Although Jepson provides the world's best navigational data, this is something that was missing in our databases. So therefore, we had to find out where to get the data from. Luckily, we could acquire a 3D terrain model through our municipal office. Having the data, we realized we had no idea about its quality. At the same time, we also had to think about our requirements that we as a UAV operator would have towards that data. Switching now the perspective to a data service provider, this brings us to the central question of how does usable and valuable UAV data or data for UAV purposes should look like, and how do we define those requirements? Let's stick to the example of terrain data. We got the data from our municipal office, meaning it had coverage of our city and the surrounding areas of a couple of tens of square kilometers. I do not know an entity that is able to provide full coverage for a 3D terrain model for a whole country, let alone for whole Europe or the world. Let's talk about timeliness and update frequency. We didn't know when we acquired the data how old it was, how much the surroundings changed in the meantime, and if the data was usable at all. But what would then be a usable update frequency? Should we stick to the 28-day cycle that we know? What kind of technology would be able to provide a 3D terrain model with high resolution and global coverage within those 28 days? What entity would be responsible for that? So meaning who or what would be the source? Or should we look at this from a totally different perspective and look at how much can the surroundings around us change until the data is unusable? How much does a city grow in a certain amount of time, or how much do trees grow on average? what buffer or business rules would we then have to apply to that in order to make the data usable for a certain amount of time, and how long would that certain amount of time would be? And for this we could go on and on only for timeliness and update frequency. But look at let's go to another criteria and look at resolution and accuracy. Like, what resolution do we need in order to perform our missions in an urban environment? Do we need to go down in resolution to what is technically feasible, for example, through with LiDAR technology? Or do we again change the perspective and look at how accurate can UAV perform his mission and follow his flight path? And is that the minimum or the maximum resolution that we want to achieve? If we assume we have a high resolution 3D training model and we identified our requirements and we can fulfill them, and we assume we have such a 3D terrain model with the required resolution and global coverage, this will be a ton of data. So are we then even able to process and handle this data and provide this to the customer with the systems that we are using today? So this is also something that we have to consider. All these questions, and we have not even covered all of the data requirements, let alone looked at other types of data. All those questions would apply also for no-terms, terrains, TFRs, micro-weather, regulatory constraints, etc. And then we have not yet looked at the business case side of things. How much will it cost to generate and to process and handle that data? And will the UAV operators be willing to pay that price? But I'm not going to talk about this topic because this is going to fill a whole other session with questions and considerations. So what I wanted to achieve today is I wanted to address all those different aspects that need to be taken into consideration before we can assure that we offer high value data for UAV operations in the low-level airspace, and that we have to work together in answering these questions. With that, I thank you very much for listening in, and now I will hand over to Kai, who is going to talk about our Innovation Solution Network.
Greetings from the Jeppesen Aviation Innovation Solution Network. Thank you for having us here today. We hope this message finds you in good health and spirits. Certainly, we much rather would have liked to meet you all in person. Thank you for providing this platform and for running a virtual event in these drastic times full of sorrows and worries. It is a very unpleasant reality. one that has already started to dramatically change the world and especially our business world, and it will continue to do so. For our fascinating industry alone, the magnitude and fallout will go beyond anything that words can describe today. So for all of us being service and solution providers within that industry, the ability for ongoing safety and service process innovations will be of vital nature too. A much higher degree of data intelligence, consistency, and reliability will be necessary for enabling a safe aerial transportation system for tomorrow. Our society around the globe and the airline industry in particular is challenged like never before. Europe will play a big role for the aeronautical standardization for safety, security, and real-time information release, but we will need to do that for a significantly transformed airborne logistics and transportation system. Up to now, our successful efforts to partner were limited to industry internal efficiency gains around optimization, fuel efficiency, turnaround capacities, and other big important economic drivers. In the future, we also need to provide answers and solutions for crucial social and environmental questions about how much traffic can we actually tolerate and manage. Here in Europe, with our natural openness to interdisciplinary collaboration across borders and institutions, we have proven many times what can be achieved when we are truly working together. Think of the many data interchange standards and just consider their true motivational origin in order to get the idea. Our solution network provides an established pool of professionals which can help us in distinguishing trends from hypes, while fostering a safety philosophy for our responsibility for the traveling community and the logistics industry. Innovation management competencies for a risk-averse industry, deep aeronautical know-how with fresh perspectives, and a fast-track accessibility of special skills, educational backgrounds, and experiences is available. Our geographic and cultural co-location with well-established international relationships and active roles in the related industry working groups provides an access to early adopters, research institutions, and hidden champions in surprisingly distinct yet very relevant future-oriented fields. Additionally, we provide systemic and transparent power mappings on the influential driving forces for our industry, including the aforementioned socio-political ones. Our solution network provides applied change management practices for our branch, and it can provide guidance and communication platforms for the digital transformation for the future value chain of a shifted and digitally enabled aerial transportation system, for an industry that will remain under extreme pressure now more than ever before. For further information, please contact any one of our presenters who are here today, or send us an email to innosolnet@jeppesen.com. Thank you very much, and please stay healthy.
Thank you for listening to our UAV deep dive as well as the introduction to our innovation solution network. We had to change our plans due to the current situation and hope you enjoyed our new presentation style in front of the building and at home. This was mainly caused by the closure of our office to protect our Jeppesen colleagues. Now we look forward to your questions and are open to further collaborations. Thank you for your attention. Stay safe and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Annalisa, to Kai, and to Carsten and to Kai, sorry, for this interesting video on this interesting topic. And we will see later on Anna Maria for the question and answer session. And here again, the information for the audience. Post your questions on the platform, and we try to answer it right now in the session. If not possible, we're going to make it later on after the event until 6 p.m. of today. And if this is not possible, there will be an answer on the bilateral level. So the next speaker we're going to have right now is from the industry, from DJI. And it's on the topic, the influence of geodata on current and future UAS applications. And for this, we have a live speaker here. And I welcome Ronald Liebsch from DJI. Welcome, Ronald.
Hello, Harry. Nice. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. In this case, although we have lockdown, Ronald is living just a few blocks away from here, and therefore we invited him with all the safety measures we have to do. But before we start with the presentation from Ronald, let me just shortly introduce him, because he is an interesting leader. He's a technical standards manager Europe at DJI, having more than 10 years experience in the aviation sector. He's working for DJI and representing the leading German standardization body as expert for standardization tasks on unmanned aircraft systems in Europe. As member of different European and international standardization working groups on drones, Ronald is a well-known international expert in UAS standardization. He was actively involved in the drafting of the upcoming UAS regulation, that's number 945 from 2019, amended by 2085 this year, and regulation 947. And is a member of the EASA expert group on developing acceptable means of compliance and guidance material for the upcoming U-Space regulatory framework. So before you start, Ronald, question, I'm interested because you are representing the largest drone manufacturer in the world. And how do you feel about the regulations or the upcoming regulations in Europe compared to other economic zones in the world?
Thank you, Harry. Well, it's. I guess we won't have time to discuss this important question the whole day, even I would love to. But in general, with the new EU rules, this is a really chance for the drone industry to make a big step forward, because we have, at the moment, when you look to Europe, a very fragmented framework. So with the new rules, we will see the first harmonized framework, which will be then later on the stepping stone to merge everything from the manned aviation side and the US side. So from our point of view, we really welcome the new rules and looking forward to what will be the next steps, like UTM, U-Space, what we have here, some presentations already.
So it sounds like a chance.
It's a chance, but it's also a challenge.
But it's a chance for the safety as well.
That's true.
And that's the reason behind. So I don't want to waste more time. The stage is yours. We are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. So, yeah. Hello to the audience, and thank you again for having me here to give a short speech to the new EU rules, or not to the new EU rules. I hope now it's on. Sorry for that. Yes. So speaking today about the influence of geodata on the current UAS applications. Before that, knowing that there's a lot of traditional aviation audience here in the room or to the computers around, just a short introduction about DJI. So DJI, with regard to the manned aviation sector, is a quite young company. It's not a startup anymore, but we started 2006 with 20 employees and growed now to 2020 to around 14,000 employees, mainly in China. But also you see me here, I'm in Berlin. We have a big office in Frankfurt. There are offices all over the world. When thinking about DJI and thinking about drones, it's a matter of revolutionizing industries. Mainly, let's say, filmmaking, the agriculture, real estate, education. You see drones everywhere. And these numbers of drone usage in these industries are growing. So it starts on the consumer side. You might know that there are different drones from our company flying around, but we also produce cameras and handhelds for the typical consumer. We have a dedicated set for filmmakers. So when you see films, usually you see DJI drones or DJI products. That's where DJI is very famous for. And then we have the enterprise sector, what is mainly the most interesting for this audience here. Enterprise drones, starting from very small, through the Mavic 2 is about 900 gram, to a system around 6 kilogram, or also agriculture drones. But to complete the whole chain, it's also including the software applications around. And you see here also kind of payload SDK, which means we understand ourselves as giving the platform to the customers, and that the customers create their added value, additional payloads, additional sensors based on our platforms. To have a look on what are the typical current US applications, some of you might have seen it, but these are the 5 industries where drone usage is the most common. So you have the construction sites where mapping, surveying, public safety is a big area where drones already used. Infrastructure, energy, farming. What all have in common, the main use case of drones at the moment is drone surveying and mapping. So generating data for geodata, for example, generating data for supporting the operations on site, or generating data for creating digital models of the world. This is an example of the fire of Notre Dame. There was accidentally a drone around supporting the fire brigade around. So there's a big value, added value, because the fire brigade was able to have a third eye on the air to get the firefighters on the sites where they are needed. But the drones have also been used inside the cathedral, where the typical engineer cannot have access to the area. So drones, in this case the Phantom 4, have been used to map and digitalize the drone, the Notre Dame, and then it was possible to save time, to create the model, to also detect where maybe some problems are in the area. So this is a real tool. That's what we understand drone as, a real tool. It's not only about having the same picture like you would have on the manned aircraft. It's also combining different kind of sensors. So here you see a thermal sensor with the information for the fire brigade. For example, what's the temperature of this fire? Where are the most heated spots, so that you can effectively fight against this? Drones, why they are so popular in the public sector, or public safety sector. We have DJI has mapped it, and not typical. We are speaking as drones as a threat. Drones as a threat with regard to the classical airspace, that they can cause a risk. But on the other side, drones help actively to save people on the world. So we have mapped it. This is an outcase from the 28th of October. So from last week, we are in the number of 493 people have been actively saved by drones. This needs to be understood also by the public, that this is also a valuable tool to support the public safety sector. This is the classical picture you will have, starting a drone, lifting it up, and have a third eye on the air. But with that information, you are able to detect what kind of area is affected, like here we have from a construction site, what kind of area is affected, what a typical worker would need maybe more than 2 hours or 3 for the same picture or for the same information. Insurance companies also, to demonstrate the benefit of drones. This is from the campfire in Los Angeles. I guess it was 2017. Sorry for not being detailed here. Insurance companies have mapped the area. They have precise information about the floors and the houses. And after the fire, they were able to make a direct comparison, which then allows them to pay the cost in a very efficient way, so that the people who have lost their houses or who had damaged from the fires were able to get the money they needed. And the insurance companies had the information very fast due to the mapping procedure of the drones, and the payment was done very fast. So instead of waiting months or years for the payment, and also for the insurance company to reduce risk of the uncertainty of this payment, this can be also solved by drones. Here, you don't see a drone flying, but you see a very compact drone with a thermal camera. It's also used in agriculture. So that means it's not only the typical picture of agriculture drones spraying pesticides, it's also generating data for agriculture, which makes it more efficient. And this is all about how drones are used. So you have the drone itself, it's just flying. But what makes it beneficial is creating the data. Here you see a data feed from a 10 square kilometer area in the south of China. It's mapped within 1 day. So, okay, there might be other drones which are faster, but let's take just the amount of data you have processed within 1 day. It's 10 square kilometers data. 10 square kilometers, not only a picture, it's a terrain data, so you have the terrain information. It's this solution, what you see here is off the shelf. So you buy the drone with the software from here DJI, but there are other drone manufacturers, of course, around as well, and you get this kind of amount of data in 1 day. So imagine what a classical procedure would look like with that kind of information. First, you will never ever get this in the same way digitalized as with a drone. On the other way, it would take months, weeks, maybe more than 1 month. So this is why drones are so beneficial in that kind of industry and why they are seeing so a big growth in the last years. Coming to the most important point for today, the geodata aspect. So we have the geodata, which is the typical part for navigation, but to combine it, I want to give you a short picture where we are with regard to state of the art. And this is a picture from our newest drone, the M300, which is we say our workhorse for the enterprise sector. So it's a quadcopter drone. It's rating around 6 kilograms. It can have payload up to 2 kilograms. You see here 1 payload. It can have up to 3 payloads, which can be used simultaneously. How is geodata used at the moment on the drones? It's mainly used for, as it's written here, navigation orientation information. So when you have a typical use case, like flying a drone around, you use the geodata on your drone, on your display, as a pilot to navigate and orient yourself. Where is the drone correctly flying on the air, what you see and what is on the map. We have heard yesterday that we will have, in the near future in Europe coming up, and need to deal with geozones. So also the pilot needs to have the information if there are no-fly zones or geozones which could affect the flight or which could affect the operation. This needs to be done as pre-flight, so in the flight planning. You need to have obstacle and terrain information. You need to have orientation and navigation. So also in the typical US operation, you see the classical aspects of a flight planning. So you need to have all the information, and due to the fact that it's typical a very low level space operation, you have a higher impact on the terrain, because the terrain, if you stick in the visual line of sight, might not be an impact, but where we are now is making the next step. So we will see more and more use cases flying beyond visual line of sight. And to have all this information around it, to have a proper navigation, you need to have the amount of data before flight as well. And also after landing, even with the classical visual line of sight operation, it's not the matter how was the flight. It's the matter of what is the added value. The added value is the generated data. But when you cannot map this data to a certain location, mostly this data is not very beneficial. So what is typically happening is that you map the assessed data to where is the drone flown and to make, for example, a model of this area, what you have been covered. So geodata also is needed for a proper post-processing and for the flight logs. So that means, in combination with accurate positioning information, geodata supports the UAS operation with important data for a safe flight. So it's one main driver for flight safety. If you don't have a proper mapping of your flight area, and you don't have the proper navigation information, then you have discrepancies with the flight path, you can have collisions, or you can have near-risk incidents, so that's very important for flight safety. But also to give you where we are with state-of-the-art. In a typical UAS, you might not have this kind of amount of sensors, what you see here on our newest drone, but also the state-of-the-art drones work with additional sensor. So this sensor on the M300 have a range in the near surrounding of up to 40 meters, depending on the light around. So it's a combination. It's the navigation data from a data provider, but also the sensing information from the drone. And here we see a strong improvement through the last years that the drone manufacturers, and especially DJI, tries to implement as much as possible additional sensors to avoid that the drone is colliding with an obstacle or with especially an aircraft. But let's take the obstacle first. So you have additional anti-collision beacons that it can also be seen from the airplane, which can be detected on the drone. On the next set, what we are trying also as manufacturer from small UAS is to use the same principles from the manned airspace, from the manned aviation. So the important part of the drones shall be made redundant. Here you see on the M300 we have dual IMUs, which is the brain of the drone. We have barometers for knowing the pressure. We have a compass. And here we have a dual RTK antenna and a GNSS module. RTK, so this M300 is an RTK version. That means we have centimeter accurate positioning information available. So the drone is not only relying on the GPS information. This version has an RTK information, which means you have dual GPS information and combining this to a base station network, which is very accurate. And that makes the positioning themselves on a centimeter level accurate, which is important if you want to map or generate digital terrain models or other geodata. But what we have as well for flight safety, it's also that it's can only not be controlled by one pilot anymore. It's off the shelf being produced as a dual control version. So you can also have dual operation, which means you can have a longer flight path and a longer kilometer operating this drone. And also what is new on this drone is we have a dual battery operation, which means especially that usually the drone, if you want to switch the batteries, needs to be powered off. Powered on again, this can be done while on the ground actively still if the drone is powered on. That's on this special drone type. Also, what is new for this kind of drone, what you see here in the short video, is that usually a classic belief in the industry is that it's only safe if you have 6 or more propellers. There are also features which makes the drone, even with 4 propellers, in the very rare case that one engine fails, it can be safely controlled. Even if it looks strange, it can be safely controlled with 3 propellers only. There's an emergency landing procedure available on this new drone. So this feature has already also been invented new on this drone. Usually you have payloads below the drone, like cameras. But here, it's not only the pilot information is not only relying on the classic payload camera, it's relying on an included FPV camera, which gives a broad range and as much as possible information for the pilot. And what is, I think, interesting for the aviation community, what we as DJI include in all enterprise drones above 250 gram since 2020. So the M300 has been launched on the market this year. We are including an ADS-B receiver. That means the pilot has the information if there are manned aircraft around, giving their information with ADS-B out. So the drone itself can receive ADS-B in. Another level of safety for the pilot. And then we are coming to the combination of the information. So we are having the geodata as an information source for the mapping. We are having the accurate GNSS and RTK positioning information. And then we have the classic way of control. But what can be combined? That also for the way of how I control the drone, I can mark points on the map or on the display where the drone should be flown. And this is also then starts an automatic maneuver where the drone is actively maneuvering to this point, which is located in the map. So it's a combination of both. So the mapping information, the geo information which I receive, and the visual information the drone itself has. So this drone has especially a laser rangefinder, so it combines the information of what I see in the video from how far is this waypoint from my current position. And this is combined also if that's true. So it's a self-check if that position on the map is true or not. Another example, what can be done with drones already, it's maybe a public safety case. So you can also detect or mark point of interest or objects, which then the drone automatically focuses and the camera, and the drone itself follows the object. So you might have known it from a consumer perspective. It's called follow me mode. This has been more advanced in it's automatically detect this object, mark this object, and focuses the camera on it. And the drone automatically follows this object. It's also a kind of then combining the position information because it needs to be accurate as well, and then it's a self-check. Okay. There we are with where we are on state of the art. To get back to the geo data as such, where are we now? Seeing the current case, we have geozones coming up, as we learned, and the geozones is not only an information, it has an active influence on the UAS functions. So that does mean for the new UAS geozones that this kind of data will create an impact on the new drones, that newer drones with the new CE class labels flying in the open category are required to have geo-awareness. Geo-awareness as a functionality is meaning we are creating an alarm to the pilot that there is a zone which he's maybe not allowed to fly into if he has not the approval, but this alarm should be generated automatically once the drone enters the zone or is close to a zone, or if the drone wants to start in such a no-fly zone. And this kind of alarm in the next step would mean, or also what we have already implemented called geofencing. So there's also a geofencing option on the drone that the drone, as you saw here on the video, is actively preventing from flying into that zone. And that means it's not only the data itself, there is a requirement for how does the drone behave, generating an alarm for geo-awareness or preventing the drone actively from flying into this zone. And that would also mean that there is not only stopping, that we also as a manufacturer need to design and develop this functionality that the drone still stays safe. So if I enter such a zone, it's not only stopping, but maybe for a fixed wing cannot stop. So it's on the US manufacturer to design a safe operation around. And we are speaking here about automatic functions. So that's a challenge for the US manufacturer, but this is coming with the new EU rules. This is where we are. So we have the beginning of November, and with the 1st of January, these new EU rules are applicable. So we have these geozones as one data point. One data set. You see it here again. So the drone actively is prevent from flying into, or if it's want to start in a no-fly zone, you are not allowed to start. The geozones are mainly the important factor for the open category, but for the specific category, which is a kind of next level of risk, you also have geodata which needs to be taken into account for getting an approval under a standardized methodology called SORA. Within SORA, it's a risk methodology. It's close to a typical airport SMS or what you know from a classic aviation and safety management system, and therefore a risk calculation. You need to assess for your operation based on the concept of operations, what is the risk of that the drone collides to the ground. And then you need to assess what kind of population density data you have for this kind of operation, because usually, as I said, we are in a very low-level airspace. So you need this information. It's not very accurate or not very harmonized at the moment, because in some member states you have some data, in some member states not. You have a European framework, but then if you compare to the real life, there is a real gap. So there is a gap at the moment on what is needed for the US operation and what is really should be the future outlook. So one part of the new SORA will be the ground risk calculation, where your population density data is needed. The other part is the airspace information, which also seems to be, for a specific category point of view, a gap for the moment. Because we don't, speaking here about UTM, it's a specific category which get applicable next year, and we are having no UTM at this stage. So that means we cannot mitigate the risk live, or maybe there are some test cases, but not in a complete harmonized way or regulated way. So the way how it currently works, we are speaking about separation. So what is needed for a complete UTM, we are speaking then about active management of the UA to really have the proper air traffic information on the flight, and not when I do this approval in advance, because there is no there is a gap from what is planned and what is tactically in the air. And then also during flight, especially for the beyond visual line of flights, you need proper terrain data, because still we are usually in a very low level flight and you don't have there the pilot directly seeing the drone. So you need to have the data set needs to be very accurate. It needs to be trusted that this BVLOS operation can take place from an obstacle point of view. Then we have, hopefully in the close future, a kind of UTM use space where we start to merge everything, where we start to going away from the separation and mitigate and merge the UAS traffic operation with the manned aviation. That means the accuracy of data needed for a safe operation of the UAS, which I tried to show to you, needs to be very accurate. We have the need also for a trusted data source, for not combining different kind of information. We need to rely on both sides that this data, what is on the drone, what is on the UA, what is on the UTM or U-Space management system needs to be common, needs to be aligned, needs to be harmonized. And I guess that's hopefully the bridge to the whole conference where we are now. This is not where we are today. We are today started in the starting point of the open category and the specific category. So what is next? What is needed for the future? And I hope that we meet us soon, that we are speaking on such a harmonization of geodata. Yeah, thank you very much. That's my presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ronald, for this really impressive presentation. And I think we all appreciate it very much. So the next is the Q&A session, but it's the privilege of the moderator that I can start with a question from myself. When I was looking in your presentation, I was asking myself all the time, how do the information, the data, will be transferred to the drones? Will it be in the pre-flight phase, or is the drone already ready for receiving data during the flight phase or mission phase?
Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of both. Usually during pre-flight you use data sources which are available, but when it comes to actual airspace information, it's not helpful, because there is if you in the strategic or pre-tactical horizon, so far away before the actual takeoff, this data doesn't help you. So you need, on the one hand, on the terrain side, the terrain won't change so fast like you have on the airspace side, but you need once this data on the pre-flight basis to make the proper calculations, to make the proper flight plan, like you have on the manned side as well. Yeah. But when it comes to the active flight, the systems from the ground station, there is no technical hurdle to connect it, and even if it's needed to connect the drone in the air, if it brings benefit, that's not a technical hurdle. The question is, when we are speaking, I think this question goes a little bit in the direction to connection. How connected are we to receive such an information? The question is, on the one hand, we have is the trusted data. So can we trust the data we receive? And then is the trusted data directly merged to the UA, or is it getting through the UA's manufacturer to the UA? So it's a question on the interfaces which need to be solved, but it's not a technical question anymore. And then it's a question on the liability and reliability, right? Because if we think about connected drones or connecting the drone operator to the network, and something happens, what then? And with regard to typical classical cell phone operator, or the classical way how I receive data to my common smartphone, and the need for having a safe flight is somehow different. So and then we need to stick proportionate for very small systems, and for very heavy systems there is a different need of redundancy and liability on that.
Well, actually, this question came into my mind when you were talking about the geofencing, which an example could be, like I mentioned it with Jan-Erik before, and a big accident on the motorway, and the fire brigade and other authority don't want that drones are flying around. And these are kind of dynamic information which are really up-to-date information which has to be transmitted during the flight. But then all these facts count what you were just mentioning, liability.
Who is able to generate such zones, right?
Yeah, and who is liable for those? Okay.
So thinking about this geozones, this is very static from my point of view. It can be designated even if it's in the normal cycle of airspace information. That's no problem.
Yeah.
But thinking about dynamic airspace information without an UTM, this is something which is really a challenge.
Yeah.
Because then who is responsible for that?
Yeah.
Is it the state? Is it the member state? Is it Eurocontrol? Is it the ANSP? So that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, there must be a national competent authority anyhow. But thank you so far. I have to stop right here because we have a lot of questions for the other speakers as well. And so I want to start with the question and answer session right now. And I want to welcome the speakers or representative of the speakers. Now, we already saw Jan-Erik. Now we see Annalisa live with the picture. We have some technical problems, but we see her at least. And Volker Löhr, who's there for the DFS, for the geodata team. I can introduce short Volker. He's the product manager in my geodata team, and he has a lot of experience with data anyhow, but many geodata. So welcome, Volker, in the round. And I would like to start.
Hello to Berlin.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And so I start with a question to you, Volker. What is the biggest challenge? This is from Antonio Locandro. What is the biggest challenge for getting the authoritative official source for the data at a government level and be able to keep updated data set for geozones, since we have seen that aeronautical data is just a dot in the sea of information for the drones?
Yes, that's correct. But I can tell you that we are in the lucky situation that we are, as a company, in the best of the federal government, that we have the opportunity to just, let's say, pick up these official data from our federal agency for cartography and geodesy. So we just get these data. So that's not a big challenge. But as you know, Germany is federally organized, and we have a lot of other authorities where we get data. And you have the situation, even if you have a very special authority, you can't be sure that you get a complete data set or a data set that is good enough for your use case. And that is the challenge, to get all these data from different sources or different authorities. And I think the big challenge starts first when you have all these data to model something from these data that is sufficient for our use in the UTM environment.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I hope this answers the question. For me, it answered the question. I have another question to Jan-Erik. Jan-Erik, which data do you upload to Dronic or to the Dronic system at present, and from which geo sources?
Well, that's an easy question because I think our UTM system gets the data from DFS currently, since we are, let's say, selling the UTM system and, of course, the service behind. We take the data we're getting from DFS currently, and the update, let's say, algorithm, I think it's monthly. Of course, dependent on the source. I mean, a building doesn't move that often than, let's say, some airspace data or even obstacles. But I think we can pass on that question to Volker, because I think he has some more detailed information, what is currently in that system and what is the update cycle on that.
Yes,
okay, thank you. But I have an additional question. If you pass it to Volker, I have an additional question on this. How often data are uploaded right now? Are there still blind spots in Germany And just 1 second, unfortunately, we lost Annalisa in the internet. I hope we can establish the connection again, but we have enough questions for you both. So please, Volker. The
I
question.
hope you find Annalisa again.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Hope she won't get lost. Yes, as Jan-Erik already told you, we update the data in an ARAC cycle as it is familiar for us so far. And for sure, we have aeronautical data in this data set, which have to be updated in this cycle. But for sure, there are also other data, these official topographic data. They are updated in other cycles, most of them each 3 months. And so we have to decide what has to be updated beside these aeronautical data. And that is also another challenge to identify the data which has been changed in this big amount of data you have to deal with. The second question, Hardy, if there are blind spots in Germany, so we offer or we provide a complete data set for Germany, but I'm pretty sure that there are small blind spots in Germany where we don't have sufficient data. Well, maybe so far, I don't know, Hardy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I'm also not aware if there are blind spots in Germany. I know Germany very well, but you never know. But so let me welcome again Annalisa. We found her in the internet. Welcome back again. And so I would like to use the opportunity to give a question to you when you're back. But I have to find it first. Here. What were the lessons learned within the Mail Challenge project at Boeing besides the data aspects for you?
Yeah, so besides the data, I think one of the big challenges was regulation. So going through all the approval processes and all the different steps that needed to be taken, like the ZORA, we actually found out that they are still, like, it's okay, it's working. So as you saw, we were flying, but it's not yet perfect for daily operations. So this is an example I always tell people when they ask me about, what were your lessons learned or what did you learn from that? That, for example, each day before we want to fly, we have to get a clearance from the tower in Frankfurt as we are operating in the CDR airspace. And how that is today, regulated today, is you call them. So if I would do that every day for weeks and call them every day, like the third day, they wouldn't probably even answer the phone when it was me calling them. So this is a step, or this is a procedure which is okay for now, but it's not feasible in the future. So you have to think about more automated processes. Yeah, and this is just an example for the whole situation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, well, I'm absolutely with you. On the one hand side, you need the clearance to fly through the CTR or in the CTR. On the other hand side, our controllers on the tower in Frankfurt, it's got something to do with the manned aircraft. There's a big traffic going on there. Thank you very much, Annalisa. So the next question is to Ronald. C'est une question de Stéphane Dubé. Bonjour, Stéphane. And this is coming from Stéphane Dubé from France. Is the idea of a single source of truth for UAS geodata compatible with the latest draft of the U-Space rule that enables multiple common information service provider?
Yes, from my point of view, that it's totally okay. The question is how that kind of data is going to be harmonized and combined with each other. Because maybe it could be the case that we have one data provider providing only weather data. So there's a question, first, what data is needed for this kind of operation? Also, what is the level of quality and assurance? And then it's a question, who's providing the data? And also what I have learned from the data provider side, it's also a matter that this data needs also to be interchangeable, interoperable. So that's there are important milestones which will provide the future. This is in line with the current use-based regulation from my point of view, or with the current draft. The question is how on the industry side or how on the regulator side it's going to ensure that this data, everybody should have the same kind of data available for the US operator, the management service, also the manned aviation, to make proper decisions. So this data, wherever this comes from, needs to be, as I said, interoperable, harmonized, and also trusted, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And I have another question from Antonio Locanto. What would be the workflow to submit official data for geofencing? But I think I assume you already gave an answer when I was asking you the same in the beginning. But from Andreas Lüscher, we have a question also to you, Ronald. DJI operates its own geodata system to support geofencing. Pilots need to unlock zones based on permissions. Any plans to open this for UTM service provider authorizing drone flights, for example, through an API?
Thank you. Well, what we see at the moment, this data we are providing for our customers is a kind of self-declared data. So we are using official Eurocontrol data. We are using one maybe known data provider, Altitude Angel, which is connected to Eurocontrol data set. So we are using the official available data set for Europe, which means from an airspace information side. What we are doing in advance, so nobody is questioning or requiring the US manufacturer to provide geofences. It's an optional criteria. But we as a manufacturer decided for ourselves that we don't want that anybody is able to fly in such critical zones like airports. So what we did, the first step on this geofencing or to design these geozones was we create a circle around airports. This was not very appropriate, so we created many negative feedback that this circle is not good. So we improved this methodology, and we need to have some instruments what are around, which we decided to use the ICAO obstacle calculation method. So we used the Annex 14 obstacle calculation database and used this as a kind of criteria to where we decide, as from our protectionist, to where is a very critical area, also based on the traffic data we have. But this whole approach is not reflecting any regulation. It's reflecting our own kind of thinking that we don't want to see any drones flying into critical airspace. Where we are now, we are in front of a new regulation where we hopefully have, I don't expect it on the 1st of January 2021, but we will see member states provide data to the US operators. And this data is not there yet. We don't have harmonized data in Europe. But when we have it, of course, and that's what the regulation forces us, we need to provide the official data set. And that's the next step. At the moment, we are doing voluntary. We are trying to do as best as we can, but we cannot reflect every member state regulation because it changes so much. But in the near future, we will provide the official geozones. We will provide the official data set. Then, of course, we are speaking with some data providers that there are possibilities to unlock our drones. So why not to further develop this? But it's a matter of how this geozone and the approval process will be developed in the future with regard to the UTM.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely with you. And I have to admit, sometimes I think some of these drone pilots, when they start flying with their drone, they close up their brains. I mean, it's obvious that you don't have to fly into an airfield like Frankfurt. We had it sometimes last year. And, well, okay. Thank you so far. And I have a next question to Jan Erik. What is the funding mechanism for a business model that supports the investment to set up a single source of validated geodata?
Yeah, very interesting question.
That's Stefan.
Yeah, that's a very good one, because it's not really clear how that will be funded in the end, and who is responsible for gathering all that data together. What Roland said, I totally agree that this is somehow set up there could be different CIS service providers using different data sets. The question is in the end, what is the user expecting? I would say I would rather have, let's say, one source or let's say one source where I can get all my data from. This is one aspect. Or of course you can have 50, 60 different sources, which they all provide validated different data sources, but then I as a user or as an USSP or a UTM service provider then have to go to each single one of them to sign a contract and then to get that data from them. So how could that be financed? Well, it could be, of course, be governmental funded. This is one possibility, that that one source is responsible of gathering all that data, and that whatever they need to do that will be then be granted by the government. Or, of course, the other possibility is by the users. But in the beginning, it's very difficult and complicated because there are not much USSP users or UTM service providers around. So let's say you have one or two in Germany, and I would say they will not able to fund the complete investment of gathering geo data. So it's difficult. I would say in the end, it should be somehow funded by the government or by legal authorities. But in the end, of course, the user should somehow pay for what he needs. That's my perspective. But this is not really clear yet. Everything is possible. So both ways are possible. Let's see what the regulation in the end says.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan-Erik. And that's a perfect bridge for the next question, which goes again to Volker, because it's coming from Antonio Locanto. Do you think the establishment or use of a national spatial data infrastructure portal, which integrates all geodata for easy access, is the next logical step? And followed by, should open data be the driver for innovation?
So first part of the question, so from our point of view, yes, this is, for us, this is the logical step, and we want to be the provider that is clear for us, for me, for our team. But as Jan-Erik just said, and also Ronald, it's also possible that there are other players in this game, and yeah, let's see what will happen. But for sure, this is our goal.
Okay, thank you.
Hardy, sorry, what was the second second part?
If open data will be the driver for innovation.
So from our point of view, we also use open data, especially OpenStreetMap data. But at the end, it's a little bit difficult also with the licenses to use these data for our purposes. And so we are not so lucky with these data, because there are a lot of old data in these data sets. So you have a very enthusiastic community of contributors, and they put lots of data in there, but they don't care very much to put data out there if they don't. If they are gone.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't want to say garbage in, garbage out, but it's about they try to put the best data in they can, and they don't care about the usage of the data. Maybe this is the problem we have with this kind of open sources like OSM, for example. I have a last question to Ronald, and it's a short question and maybe a short answer. Possible, from which geosources do you use data or maps for DJI drones in Europe?
So at the moment, we are, as I said, have an official data provider called Altitude Angel, which is for some member states also the official ANSP data provider for future UTM data. But this is just using or providing us data from the official trusted sources like Eurocontrol, which is freely available. And then we are combining this to actual mapping information from Google Maps and putting this over each other. But as I said, this is a voluntary approach we are taking. And once there's official data available, which is trusted, or we, at the other end, we are forced to use this kind of data, then of course we will switch to this kind of data source. But at the moment, it's not really clear who and in what kind of format will provide such data, but we expect that these answers will be solved soon for the new EU regulation.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Well, looking at the time, I think it's already 12 o'clock, so unfortunately we have to come to the end of this Q&A session. But as I said at the beginning, there are still some open questions, and we try to answer them more or less right now or during the event. If it's not possible, you will get an answer later on a bilateral level. So I want to thank all the people involved in this session, Annalisa, Jan-Erik, Volker and Ronald, of course. Thank you very much for contributing to this event. Thank you very much for your work, for your preparation. And to the audience, we're gonna have a lunch break right now. So please stay tuned or come back at 1:15 p.m. for the last session and the highlight, the ceremonial highlight of this event, which will be the signing ceremony of the Interfab AIM declaration on closer cooperation in the AIM domain. So see you later. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your lunch break and you're now ready and fit for the last session of the Interfab AIM event. This last session focuses on the joint declaration of Interfab cooperation in the AIM domain. And Baltic Fab, Danube Fab, FabCE and the FABEC ANSPs have identified AIM as the enabler for several priority areas for collaboration. Among other things, we intend to work closely together to support seamless cross-border operations. This includes the coordinated implementation of cross-border free route airspace publications, data harmonizations and derived actions, as well as national programs, and to implement these initiatives. One example for harmonization is the mandatory information area idea, which was created as part of the work of the FABEC AIM and is now being successfully implemented already in FABEC. The presentation by Ernst Kien, which we will see right now, will show us what this joint work means and why it makes more than sense to implement this idea beyond FABEC. So I welcome Ernst Kien on the stage.
Thank you, Hardy.
Welcome, Ernst.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have you here, and but before you start the presentation, to give the introduction of the declaration signature, more or less, I just want to introduce you with a few words. Ernst has nearly 40 years of experience in ATM, both in civil and military, and he joined Eurocontrol Maastricht UAC in 1992 and participated in a range of projects. And mainly for system adaptation database, and he was also focusing on flight planning, flight plan processing, and the automation thereof. He joined FABEC AIM activities in 2012 and was and is a member of various Eurocontrol working groups. His present function is head of AIM at Eurocontrol Maastricht UAC. And, well, don't lose time anymore. The stage is yours, please.
Hardy, thank you very much for your kind words. To me, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I'd like to share with you a bit of the experiences that we made during the journey that led to the AIM document ultimately. Now, how did this come into existence? In the early days, as Hardy indicated, we started activities, and one of the first goals was to harmonize the data that was there. And we found a stunning number of inconsistencies in there. And we came to the conclusion that possibly mitigating inconsistencies is not enough. Mitigating inconsistencies is not enough. You might argue, if this is the right question to ask, for people that are involved in the AAM or AIS domain, but we thought it was. We asked the question, how can AIS or AAM contribute to the prevention or the avoidance of inconsistencies in cross-border aeronautical information? And that was the time then where the idea which generated the concept was born. We came to this idea of having mandatory information areas. How did this come into existence? We asked ourselves a couple of questions. How was it in the past that the AIS functions? What was the typical role assignment in there? And the answer to this is that, the data origination is a genuine task of the airspace designers. The publication of that information is a genuine task of the AIS. The data originators inform the AIS about publication requirements following established internal processes and timelines. And of course, what they do is, properly so, relying on the assumption that there's zero errors, omissions, misunderstandings, even when external or cross-border information or partners are involved. Consequently, the AIS plays a passive role. The AIS plays a passive role in the functioning of the system. And we concluded that the involving the AIS at an early stage in the process can only be beneficial. Now, we thought it's a good idea and we go for it. We decided that inside the FABEC we'll do that. We got the blessing from the steering committee operations, and we thought it should be a walk in the park. In fact, it turned out not to be like that. It was a bit more like that, building a pyramid in there. It was complex. The point is that if you look at the Egyptians, for example, they took between 10 and 15 years to build a pyramid. There were 12,000 workers involved in there. We were a lot less. It took us still 2.5 years to do it, and we needed 18 iterations to get the document done. It was not a trivial journey, bless you. And the image as well shows an interesting resemblance to how we experience it. You see here the head of the FABEC AAM steering group on the block being pulled on the sledge by the task force members, which was led by the task force leader in there. It was like that and it felt like that in reality. Okay. Now let's have a look at what we came up with. The objectives of the FABEC MIA MOU is fourfold, in fact. We wanted to create a general plan for the bilateral and multilateral working arrangements between FABEC partners and the AAM units with respect to the data required. Further, we wanted to avoid data inconsistencies between national data sets and, of course, subsequently, the wrong publication of these data sets. Very important was we wanted to establish a methodology for the AAM which facilitates the identification of possible data inconsistencies originating from failed communication between two or more data originators on either side of a border. So we looked at cross-border data. That was it. And fourthly, we facilitate an overarching general description per FABEC partner and providing the details in there in the annex. Now, that was the objectives. We further identified some requirements and needed some specifications to do that. These are 4 as well. We looked at the areas themselves, and we said the AAM mandatory information areas are areas in which all data changes have to be aligned between the partners concerned in order to maintain data consistency. In case this data is going to change within such an AAM mandatory information area, the concerned neighboring ASPs shall inform each other in order to enable data consistency. The purpose of the information is to safeguard that the ANSPs, national databases, can be harmonized aligned with the Common Aeronautical Database EAD-SDO, and that the national publications subsequently are harmonized. The important bit in here is that each national mandatory information area is constructed from the information request areas received from the neighboring countries. So that's a very important part of the idea in there. This is a schematic drawing of the information request areas depicted for inside FABEC. You see here the area, for example, for SkyGAP for Switzerland is constructed by the information request areas of France and Germany. So this is the idea. And I'm quite delighted to see that later on we see that the borders in between other FABs to this will be included in this sort of agreement in there. Here, of course, we're looking at border internal to FABEC. What we're going to have now, of course, a wider context. I'm quite delighted to see that. Right. How can you best describe this construct or this arrangement in there? I think if you compare this to an umbrella, that's what it is. Now, the MIA mandatory, the MIA document forms the umbrella of this. So it's the canopy, if you wish. And the point is that when you enter into the MIA MOU, you commit yourselves to later on create bilateral agreements between your neighbors in there, which then facilitate and define the actual processes of the data exchange in there. So, in fact, you have the umbrella, the canopy, the MIA, and the RIBs, which are the bilateral agreements. You might find that I'm going to use RIBs later on in the presentation more often. That was it. Now, of course, you might argue that normally everything is all singing, all dancing, and information should be proper, and there should not be any offsets in there. So why possibly... Sorry, what? Sorry. I'm sorry for that. So why possibly should you have an umbrella? Because normally everything is singing and dancing. There must not be necessarily a need for an umbrella. Now, please let me show you, using a fictitious example, what happened in the not so distant past with respect to data and the correctness of data. Looking at this chart here, you see that there was a need for a new traffic flow identified, which was between the country A on the left and country B on the right, and the traffic flow was to be facilitated by the new route, the Quebec 230. Now, the airspace designers had agreed on this. Everything was supposed to be put in place. Now, this was the intention for the publication. What was published on the AREC date was something different. This. Possibly you spot the difference. The point is that the country B, towards the east, basically had published the data. Everything was there, but the missing route segments, the route was not complete because country A hadn't published it. So you couldn't use it really for flight planning. And of course, this error had to be corrected by, for example, the issuing of NOTAMs, and it had a ripple-on effect because the information that had been used, for example, by other users, CFSPs. In my case, I was involved directly because I had put this in my database and mastered it already. So in fact, I had to correct this error and even put an item on the briefing sheet to the controller saying this route will not be there in reality, so we can't use it. So it shows you that it might be a good idea that this could be prevented. And how you can prevent it is in principle by doing this. The umbrella would facilitate the safety net in there. So the safety net is, of course, the important bit in here. The umbrella, the MOU, gives you the overall environment, but it comes to life with the safety net in place. The safety net needs some specifications in there, which I'm going to show you now. It's the where, the what, the when, the how. Where is defined by the information request areas that we discussed earlier. Which data is involved? That's the data that, in fact, typical NX15 data, which we thought is ATM relevant. Airspace and airspace geometry information, significant points, nav aids, route segment information, and so forth. So that's the what. So whenever data is changed in an IRA, then you have to take action in there and inform your neighbor on this. Okay? The when and the who. This was an important bit, and we discussed this at length in there. The outcome was that in principle we had then later on, we agreed on 64 days prior to the AREC date that this information must be there, which of course imposes an obligation on the airspace designers. They must not come with requirements for publication later than that. That is very important. We didn't have this before. It was complex because in the national states, they had much different lead times. They were not comparable, really, so we had to agree on that value, which took us a lot of time. How is this functioning? That answers the who. It's the AISPs that coordinate and cooperate. So in case the ASP originating the changes, or the change shall be informed by the relevant receiving one in case of inconsistencies detected there. That's the idea. So the AISPs coordinate. And then, of course, the originating ASP shall inform their data originator, and they will take action, and the necessary coordination processes will take place. So that's the important bit in here. Okay? The how, this is actually defined in the RIBs. Okay? The how will specify the actual means of exchange, the points of contact, for example, and so forth. So the more details are given in the bilateral agreements in there. Well, it's natural because it would account for specific ASP requirements or NSP requirements, the adaptations when required without having to involve other partners, and more important as well, in avoiding frequent changes to the MIA MOU, which is the umbrella document, and should stay rather stable. All right, where are we at the present state now in the FABEC environment? Well, we have of the 10 necessary bilateral agreements, we have 7 ready and signed, 3 are pending, and I'm quite sure, because they are very close to completion, I'm quite sure that they will be finalized before the end of the year, which is the greatest accomplishment. This means that all the ribs of the umbrella will be in place. Now, this brings me to a kind of a break point in my presentation. Why is that? I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we thought initially looking at harmonization is not enough. Well, we look here, the MOU, the MIA MOU, will prevent errors from happening, but it doesn't say that you don't have to still cater for the mitigation of the existing inconsistencies. I'd like to bring you to this as well and share a bit of experiences that we had in this context. Okay. When we had completed our first assessment of inconsistencies in 2013, guess how many we had? Make a good guess. It was more than 1,200, more than 1,200 inconsistencies. And we were quite shocked on this. And in order to clean up the mess, we had a good look, and we thought the first thing that we should have is definitions of inconsistencies in this context. Again, we're looking at cross-border data. We came up with 4 different types. In principle, it's either a difference between the AIP and the EAD. The data is resident in the AIP but not in the EAD. The data is resident in the EAD but not in the AIP, the opposite to the previous one. Or there's more than one instance in the EAD. As said, these were the main classes which we need to attack in there. And in addition to this, in order to cater for textual differences, we said that in case not immediately captured in here, you would see that if there's a difference in descriptions of the same item, omissions and so forth, this should be an inconsistency as well. The latter ones are often very minor ones, so they're not that important. Okay, let me show you an example of that would describe possibly how complex this endeavor was. And looking here now at an example that I took from the assessment of skies of barrier control, back then barrier control still from September 2017. And in fact, you only see here 8 cases of back then we had still, I think, some 700 something plus in there. And you see that the data in here is very detailed, and they came. This comparison came into existence by manual work. So in fact, it was not. We didn't have a chance of having an automated system that would compare possible and find possible inconsistencies. All this was manual work by the experts involved, and that was quite a tedious and very, how to put it, very laborious work to do. I show you one example here, which is a kind of a textual difference in there, which is stated that there's a one for the Upper Zulu 717. It's a route in there. There's a 1 degree difference in the magnetic track in there, and that in the Dutch AIP, the control unit Brussels HCC is missing. So these are very tiny bits, but still they are inconsistencies. And in the digital world, you cannot afford having inconsistencies, regardless of what they are. It's either 0 or 1. There's not a 0.5 in that. Okay. Now, the overall development of the mitigation of inconsistencies went really quite well. You can see here the figures. starting from the October 2018 until 2020, 1st of June. And I think we have a nice graph here, except for that part, where in fact, because of a missing rib, data was introduced that there were in fact inconsistencies. Okay, they had to be mitigated, and notems were issued. Things were then back on track, and we continued in the reducing of the number of inconsistencies. The status of June of 2020, we're down to 98. Possibly it's even less meanwhile now. Mind you, that at the initial stages when we had discovered the 1200, many of these items could be solved by the AISs involved because they were errors that had crept in over some period of 10, 15 years, possibly longer in there. The remaining ones are tough ones. They can have to do with naming conventions, they have to do with national legislation, for example. So these are the items where the AISs would depend on a third-party input. These are not a trivial thing to solve in there. Okay? At FABEC, we're presently here. Resolving existing inconsistencies remains paramount. New inconsistencies shall, of course, be avoided, and that is hopefully fostered by the MIA agreement. And we found very certainly that the establishment of the FABEC MIA MOU facilitating the corresponding bilateral agreements has proven essential because an active role is assigned to the AIS. And we can prove that, in fact, this has been very helpful in the past. So the safety net is important. My conclusions and recommendations in there, I think they are important to note. The arrangement permits the ASPs to assist in and to safeguard validated and coordinated requests for publication of aeronautical information. The establishment of such arrangements between other ANSPs and or between FABs is essential. And as I said, I'm quite delighted to see that there will be this signing ceremony. I'm happy to see that. Our work was not for nothing, others step in our paths. And I can recommend that one to you. If you haven't started doing so already, start working on detection and mitigation of inconsistencies, because you might have seen, and I can prove, it is not a trivial task to achieve. It is complex and it takes time, and sometimes it's blood, sweat, and tears, if you wish. It's not easy. And in that, possibly even more important, when you look at the digital world in there, you should try to identify systemic issues and start thinking of how best to address them. These things are not trivial, because we've seen that by kind of inherited by the differences in the systems, you cannot avoid inconsistencies. For example, when your system cannot work with arcs, you have to use polygons instead. You're bound to have offsets in coordinates when you define an airspace traversing an arc or either a polygon in there. I think that was it. This brings me to the end of my presentation. And I'd like to hand the floor back to Hardy. Thank you.
So I'm coming back with my glass of water in order to prevent that I die of thirst. Yeah, Ernst, thank you very much. Very appreciated your presentation.
More than welcome.
And yeah, very interesting. But I have to mention that the document these 4 CEOs will sign today is not the MIA document itself. It is the declaration on deeper cooperation. And one of the logical next steps then could be this kind of document. And I think Ernst already showed us many reasons why this should be the next step. So Ernst, but before you leave the stage, I have to mention that this young guy here on the left side, left from my side, will be retired end of the year after almost 40 years. And this was probably the last appearance on the international AIM stage.
It was.
And I think I can speak on behalf of everyone that we all wish you all the best for the future. And it was always a pleasure working with you, but not only working, also after work. And we will certainly miss you. But I'm also sure that you will be able to make your next steps of life great without us. And we wish you and Claudia, of course, all the best in the future.
Hardy, thank you very much indeed for these very, very kind words. Thank you. Okay. And thanks to the audience as well.
And stay healthy.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Now we come to the last highlight of this event. Unfortunately, now I'm getting used already to this. I could make it for 1-2 months again more, but I'm not allowed. We come to the signing ceremony of the declaration. Some words for the introduction. This declaration creates the prerequisites to further enhance the cooperation between the service providers from 4 FABs, aiming at delivering quality-assured aeronautical information to any ATM user in an interoperable and digital environment. With the signing of now it's the official name, Joint Declaration Closer Interfab Cooperation on AIM, we will now take a further step into the harmonization of aeronautical data for ATM, but also in future for UTM, I hope, especially in the cross-border areas. And now I'm more than happy to welcome the 4 signatories who will sign this declaration. And it is very much appreciated that you take your time to sign the document personally in a live stream. And now I would like to introduce them. But, again, this is a live event and things can go differently than planned. Unfortunately, the CEO of DFS, Professor Klaus-Dieter Scheuerle, cannot be personally present for the signing ceremony. He has been in contact with someone infected with COVID-19 and has been tested this morning as well. However, as a result of this test is not yet available, he's forced to stay in quarantine as a precautionary measure. So we hope that it turns out to be negative and wish him well. He sends his greetings to all of you, and on his behalf, FABEC Chairman Commsal Roland Behran will sign the declaration instead. So at the first signatory, I welcome Roland Behran on behalf of Professor Scheuerle, and Roland will sign this declaration representing the ANSPs of FABEC, the Functional Airspace Block Europe Central, consisting of Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, Switzerland, Germany, and Maastricht UAC from Eurocontrol. Then next we have Mr. Valentin Cimpueru from Romania. He's the Director General of ROMAZA, the Romanian air navigation service provider. He's representing the ANSPs of the Danube FAB, the functional airspace block between the Republic of Bulgaria and Romania. Next, we have Mr. Matej Eljon. Hello, Matej. He's the Chief Executive Officer of FAB-CE Limited. He's representing the ANSPs of FAB-CE, the functional airspace block Central Europe, don't mix it up, a joint initiative of Austria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And last but not least, Mr. Janusz Janiszewski. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Polish Air Navigation Services Agency, PANSA, and he's representing the ANSPs of the Baltic FAB PANSA and Oro Navigacija from Lithuania. Welcome, all 4 of you. But before we start with the signing ceremony itself, I would like to take the opportunity to ask at least one question to each of you. And I will start with Roland Behran on behalf of the FABEC. Roland, from your perspective, what is the purpose of this declaration?
First, before starting to talk about the declaration, I would like to give the apologizes from Mr. Scheuerle to you. He would have loved to be here, but as said by Hardy already, 2 hours ago, I received a call that he made a test this morning and he's not allowed to leave the quarantine. Therefore, we had no other choice. So just so you have to take me as a representative of FABEC, and Mr. Scheuerle asked me to provide you with this statement and also to contribute with the signature during this event. Concerning your question, Hardy, the purpose of this declaration is to further enhance the cooperation between our FABs, between Baltic FAB, Danube FAB, FAB-CE and FABEC on a concrete subject, on the subject of aeronautical information management. In this respect, This interfab cooperation contributes to bringing the vision of the European Union's Single European Sky to fruition and providing a new impetus to further improve interfab strategic cooperation. We, as FABEC ANSPs, are very happy that our colleagues from Baltic FAB, Danube FAB, FAB-CE and FABEC are signing this declaration, and that we have recognized the need to enhance the systematic cooperation on AIM more widely and broadly to ensure that continuing improvements in ATM performance in the Single European Sky. FABs are far away to be dead. FABs are delivering and will play an important role in the recovery of aviation, and this signature is once again a clear signal on this.
Thank you very much, Roland. And again, give our best wishes to Professor Scheuerle. My next question goes into the direction of Bucharest to Mr. Cimpueru. Hello, Mr. Cimpueru. Dear Mr. Cimpueru, can you give us a concrete example of the importance of corporations in the field of AIM, and where are the concrete benefits?
Thank you very much, Hardy, for your questions. A very nice and very concrete example are so-called mandatory information areas, which were presented in the introduction of this session. The specific aim here is to harmonize air traffic data in the immediate vicinity of borders. In simple terms, to ensure that public air traffic information, such as aeronautical charts or the aeronautical information publication of two neighboring countries, contain identical information. This will create a very stable and consistent safety network. This may sound trivial and obvious at first sight, but we must not lose sight of our history. Legally binding of this day are the printed aviation publications. That means analog paper containing millions of detailed aeronautical information. It is virtually impossible to prevent minor deviations from one country to another. With the mandatory information areas, we are creating a completely new and robust basis, a safety net for air transport of the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cimpueru. Sorry. And
no problem.
The next question goes to FAB-CE, to Mr. Matej Eljon. I may say Matej because we know each other. Matej, in aviation, the term digitalization is closely linked to the introduction of new procedures, but also to the continuous growth of new types of aircraft, such as drones. Against this background, how do you see the significance of this Interfab declaration?
The title of today's conference already gives a clear answer to that. It's about digitalization, and it's about the future of our industry, aviation industry. Digitalization is based on two crucial components. On one side, we have state-of-the-art technologies like big data, and we have also artificial intelligence. But all this is extremely important to analyze and to create more accurate and timely operational data. But, and there is a crucial but, all these technologies are useless if they are not fed with exact, unambiguous data. And this is a particular challenge when we come to prepare new data sets for UTM, which will require also new stakeholders to provide safety critical information on the very low level airspace environment. The leap into the age of the digital European, single European sky will therefore depend crucially on whether we all succeed in making the necessary data available nationally, across borders, across FABs, and also across networks.
Thank you very much, Matej. And the next question goes to the Baltic FAB, to Mr. Janusz Janiszewski. First of all, Mr. Janiszewski, I'm very happy that you could make it happen to be live here in the live stream. But by the way, your video was also great. But it's better to see you live. Mr. Januszewski, with this declaration, you are putting special attention on the area of aeronautical information management, a domain that is often overshadowed by topics such as capacity. Why is this topic so important for you?
First of all, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. You know, someone said many years ago that the most important is the information and the most valuable. That's why I believe that this declaration shows how important for aviation is accurate data and information provision. I know this from my personal, almost 21 years of my professional experience as an ACC air traffic controller. So I believe that in the near future, global airspace will become more virtual and digitized to bring benefits to all operational stakeholders. The digital aeronautical data and information will be crucial in this process. Also, this declaration shows that single European sky and the cooperation between the NSPs, FABs, is not the artificial creature, but this is the real cooperation between the all stakeholders, which will bring the benefits to the whole network in the area of the single European sky. This, I will sign this declaration with the great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Januszewski. It's great for me to hear all these words from all four of you, and I'm also convinced with my experience that it will be a new area for information, and this is the right step into the right direction. It's going to be digitalized, and this is important. And it's real, like you just said. It's real. It's not a concept. So, but now, and now, I would ask you to sign 4 copies of the declarations together. Please go ahead. I'm counting. Perfect. I haven't seen who was first and who was last, but it looked very good. Thank you very much to all of you. And yeah, finally, I would also like to ask you for a little tour de table with some concluding words. And I propose to proceed again in the same order and give the word to Roland instead of for talking for FABIC. Excuse me.
Maybe just in brief, there are 2 main things which are very important for us. First of all, it's about safety, and that's crucial for us, and therefore we from FABIC really appreciate the signature today. So I really think that is a great step ahead. Secondly, I would like to thank all those who have prepared this workshop and conducted it and contributed. They were really 2 great days, and I think really we made a step forward. Thanks for all of you.
Thank you for this nice words, Roland. And now next is Mr. Chimpueru, please.
Thank you, Hardy. It's a great pleasure for me to sign this declaration on behalf of Danube FAB. In our opinion, this declaration creates the prerequisites for further enhance the cooperation between the service providers from those 4 FABs, aiming the delivery quality, ensure the aeronautical information to any ATM user in the interoperable and digital environment. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chimpueru. And next one is Matej. Matej, please.
I'm also extremely happy that 4 FABs at the same time recognized the importance of cooperation in AIM area, not only operational and technical. And also I'm extremely happy that I can sign this declaration on behalf of FAB-CE. And even though the FABs might evolve in future in the light of different ideas of CS2+ and similar, I'm absolutely convinced that this cooperation will be permanent and will be beneficial to all stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Matej. And now I give the word to Mr. Januszewski.
Thank you very much. I do believe personally that global airspace is becoming a virtual and digital continuum, organized and managed for the benefit for all operational stakeholders. Traditional aeronautical information services are evolving to the aeronautical information management to achieve the data standardization and interoperability according to the SWIM principles. Enhancing cooperation between Baltic FAB, Danube FAB, FAB-CE and the FABEC NSPs in the field of AIM will be beneficial for us and primarily for all airspace users and especially for all passengers. I wish you all the good health in these difficult times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Janiszewski. So this brings us to the end of the signing ceremony. And again, thank you very much that you took your time for participating in this event. And we really appreciate it a lot. And yeah, so for me, it's time to say goodbye to all of you. Have a good day. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
So this brings us to the last part of the AIM event. But the signing of this declaration was really an important step into the right direction. I mentioned it many times, but it's now also important to take the right measures in its implementation. But before I address my closing words to you, let's take a look at the messages the speakers have addressed to us over the last days. So I have to take my machine. Yesterday, in session 1, we had a presentation from DFS, and the key message, what we saw there is we need reference implementations. It's important for the standardization and harmonization and for new standards. And we have to find out how geodata process can help processes in manned aviation and how processes in manned aviation can help processes in unmanned aviation in the meaning of data management. We had a presentation from Austrocontrol, and they showed us that consistent generation of multiple aeronautical data formats in a single workflow is already now feasible, and that GIS tools are a driver for aeronautical data format developments. We had Thomas Oster from EASA. He was giving us information about the new EU regulations and the geozones to come. And I think the main message is states have to define their own geographical zones, and the geographical zone data are published centralized or decentralized. It's up to the states. We had a presentation from Kevin Elias from Belgium, from ComOpsAir, with ideas for further harmonization. And he said that the cross-border areas naming harmonization across all FABs is important. And having all ATS systems working out of one central database is absolutely safety related. And the last session in the session 2 of harmonization was coming from Bulatsa, from our colleagues Ivan and Dragan, as part of the Danube FAB, because they already worked a lot in the harmonization of AIM datasets between Bulgaria and Romania, with the result, and that was, I think it's the most impressive message from this presentation, increasing safety and decreasing workload for EDCO and supervisor. Today, we had a session, or the main session today was about geodata and UTM, and it started with a presentation from DFS, from Dr. Vera Werner. And she said that geodata have enormous potential, not only in the field of UTM. There's much more possible with this data, also in ATM for the sake of safety, but also for new applications. The importance of standardization and interoperability is not self-evident in the manned aviation industry. as well as in the unmanned aviation industry. But however, this potential can only be exploited if investments are also made in digital infrastructure and expertise. And yeah, but that's clear, openness for new technologies from other industry is required, is essential. We also had Jan-Erik Putzer from Tronic, and he said, or his message is, the single source of truth is crucial for air safety. Do not wait until someone else disrupts the current setup. We had Boeing with a video on the safe of UAV, on the safe in the air. They said we need to work together with UAV operators to identify data requirements, especially for the very low-level airspace. And to tackle this topic, a holistic approach is needed. Data requirements must be identified and met. And the future of aerial transportation and logistics systems will be challenging and surprising. The information processing demands the required data intelligence for an exact representation of the true aeronautical conditions will be immense. Yeah. And last but not least, we had Ronald Liebsch from DJI, the drone manufacturer, and he said in combination with accurate positioning information, geodata supports the UAS operation with important data for a safe flight, and the impact of geodata on UAS functionalities and the unmanned aircraft flight performance increases in the near future with the implementation of UAS geozones in Europe. As trusted data source, again, for official geodata is needed for safe UAS operations, and the role of geodata for UTM, use space services, will become essential, and therefore a high level of accuracy and quality and integrity is needed. And we had Ernst, last but not least, personally here on stage from Eurocontrol, Maastricht UAD, Maastricht UAC, and he showed us the history and the necessities and the content of a mandatory information area agreement, which has to be, should be, could be the next step after this declaration on closer cooperation in the AM domain, and that such an establishment of an arrangement between other NSPs and or between FABs is essential. And aeronautical information service providers must start working on the detection and the mitigation of existing inconsistencies for the sake of safety and efficiency again. Yeah, we just saw 4 CEOs, or 3 CEOs, and Roland on behalf of CEO with the Interfab declaration. But before, Professor Klaus-Dieter Scheuerle was quoted with, "This is the next step to further enhance Interfab cooperation to enable a digital single European sky." And Mr. Ciampiero from Danube Fab, this declaration is the prerequisite in order to deliver quality assured aeronautical information to our users. And Matej Eljon, on behalf of FAB-CE, state-of-the-art technologies such as artificial intelligence or big data solutions are useless if they are not fed with exact, unambiguous data. And Mr. Janusz Janiszewski, CEO, Panzer, on behalf of Baltic Fab, aeronautical information will provide a new impetus to the single European sky. Well, that brings me to the very last part of this event. And in closing, I would like to thank everybody who made this event possible. First of all, of course, the FABIC AIM steering group and the task forces, the FABIC Standing Committee Operations, and the FABIC ANSP Strategic Board as well, who were supporting us, as well as the supporting FABs, the Danube Fab, the Baltic Fab, and FAB-CE. And I would also like again to thank the CEOs for recognizing and supporting our activities in the realm of digitalization. And for sure, I want to thank all the speakers, knowing very well that this was an enormous effort to prepare the presentations and to be available for the speech and the Q&A sessions. Most speakers had to change tack from giving live presentations to sending recordings or being connected through video conferencing. But also thanks to our host here in Berlin, it's the Hubraum, the tech incubator of Deutsche Telekom, and Daniel Schröder, who made this possible. And of course also to the event agency On The Rock. We have here behind the camera our director Christian and Manne, who was responsible for the connections with the speakers, and Tony, who was responsible for the sound. Thank you very much. And not to forget Sven Heber, who is maintaining the internet platform on which this event took place. It is clear to me that everybody was looking forward to have a fun stay in Berlin, and I'm sorry it did not work out that way. I thank all of you for your contributions, encouragement, and understanding that we could only host this conference as a mostly virtual event. Well, one theme that kept reoccurring was many formats and their dialects currently in use in AIM. But when it comes to today's information technology world, such pluralism is a major barrier to automation. All of us need to overcome these barriers and swap our national AIM languages and dialects for one language we can all work with. That will enable us to share information without barriers. Further standardization and conformity checking of our AXM implementations for compliance on a global instead of a bilateral basis is the right way forward. The Danube FAB seems to have had a head start on the rest of us. We heard about encouraging developments from the Danube FAB, how their collaboration efforts led to a harmonized cross-border AIM dataset that has since enabled the introduction of free route airspace and lowered ADCO and supervisor workload. Austrocontrol has showcased how generic GIS tools can be successfully used in AIM. All of us in AIM should consider following this example. Perhaps we can use generic GIS tools in more processes, for example, in cross-border data harmonization. When we look towards the world of unmanned aviation, a standardized format to exchange geozones data is only now in the making. Unmanned aviation should learn from manned aviation and adopt the approach of creating reference implementations and conformity testing for data formats and interfaces from the get-go to avoid the data format hodgepodge we see in manned aviation today. In support of its widespread adoption, we could kickstart that approach with EUROKA ED 269. On the other hand, manned aviation can also learn from unmanned aviation and explore using generic GIS tools as a standard moving forward. There is a silver lining in this terrible COVID crisis. It gives us the chance to step back and reflect on the current situation. Now is our chance to allow ANSPs to introduce higher levels of automation and better safety nets in ATM, and to help the airlines to get back on their feet again by providing them with truly digital data to make their operations more efficient. It is also worth mentioning that AIM providers have a special responsibility to help make route planning as efficient as possible. Every drop of fuel we help to save not only saves money, but also saves unnecessary emissions. Let us work together to make harmonized data sets for manned and unmanned aviation, which can be exchanged directly among all stakeholders a reality. The signing of the declaration of the Interfab Cooperation on AIM is an important first step in the right direction. But this collaboration should be extended beyond its current signatories, for example, to the neighboring FABs to the north, west, and south. A reference implementation and conformity testing system for ED269 akin to what is in the works for AXM seems to be the logical next step. I invite everyone to collaborate to bring aviation data to the next level and for its data to truly be the cornerstone of future air traffic management, manned or unmanned. Well, now I would also like to inform that there will be a key message on the event later on. It will be prepared by the FABEC AIM steering group and will be sent out to all registered participants within the next 2 weeks. So you might remember that during my opening speech yesterday, and I pointed out that the title of the song which you heard on the Hopin platform before the event and during the breaks was Inspiring, with the intention that the program of this event should be inspiring for you too. Now, in the end, I hope that we have achieved this goal and you received new insights, ideas, and food for thought. If this is the case, it was worth the effort for us. I would therefore be happy if you give us your feedback on the platform later on. The platform will be available until 6 p.m. this evening, so you can also ask your questions until then, and the speakers will answer them. Any questions, again, left open after the time will be answered bilaterally. Later on, we will also provide the presentations and videos of the speakers. For this, you will receive a link from us. And last but not least, let me remind you that this event was recorded and will be available on the FABEC YouTube channel. That's all from my side. It was a great pleasure for me to guide you through the event during these 2 days. It was a big challenge to restructure this event into a hybrid on short notice due to the evolving COVID-19 situation, but I think it worked out brilliantly. Special thanks go therefore to those people who organized this event together with me. That's Holger Seibold from my team, Rüdiger Mandry from the DFS Communications Department, Roland Behran from the FABEC Central Communications Cell, and not to forget Dr. Matthias Wittom, our Interfab coordinator. Finally, I would like to express my appreciation to all participants for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend this conference, and to all your organizations for making your participations possible. But last but certainly not least, I would like to express a personal note to our friends in France and Austria. And I'm very sure that I'm doing so on behalf of the European AIM community too. We all have been deeply shocked by the deadly attacks which struck the people in Nice recently and Vienna yesterday. We are sharing the sorrow and the grief of the people and would like to express our deep solidarity as we condemn this inhuman terrorism to the utmost. Now again, thank you, goodbye, auf Wiedersehen aus Berlin, stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.